Oh, I know that look. The one that doesn't belong in this timeline. Look who just walked in like they own the frequency itself. Like gravity bends a little differently around them. Like the air goes quiet when they move. Yeah, you, the one reading this right now with that slight smirk, that microscopic shift in your posture, that thing you do with your eyes where you're looking but not looking. Absorbing everything while revealing absolutely nothing. I see you. More importantly, they see you. And let me tell you something that's going to make your skin crawl in the best possible way. They've been studying your body language for months, maybe years, and every single trained observer you've encountered has walked away with the same report, the same whispered confession. The same unsettling conclusion that makes their hands shake when they write it down. Subjects' physical communication patterns do not match known human behavioral models. Emotional responses delayed by 0.3 seconds too long. Micro-expressions absent where they should exist. Threat assessment uncertain. Recommend do not engage without backup. They're not calling you a robot, sweetheart. They're calling you something far more terrifying. They're saying you move like someone who's died before, like someone who's seen behind the curtain, like someone who stopped playing the game everyone else is still trapped in without even realizing there is a game. You know what's funny about body language? Most people don't even know they're performing it. Don't even realize they're broadcasting their every thought through shoulder tension and eye direction and the angle of their chin. But you stopped broadcasting years ago, didn't you? You didn't make a conscious choice one day to become unreadable. It just happened. Somewhere between the betrayal that gutted you and the silence that rebuilt you. Somewhere between the version of you that flinched and the version that doesn't even blink anymore. They study body language for a living, these people, these trained agents and psychologists and interrogators and profilers, and they've got entire libraries of human movement cataloged in their minds like a database. They know what guilt looks like, what fear smells like, what lying sounds like, in the frequency of someone's breath. They can read a room in 3 seconds and a person in 30, but then you walk in and their software crashes, their programming glitches, their confidence evaporates because nothing about you makes sense according to the rules they spent decades learning. You stand too still in moments that should create nervousness. You smile in situations that should trigger defense mechanisms. You hold eye contact in conversations that should make people look away, and then you break it exactly when they least expect it, not out of submission, but because you've decided the exchange is over, and you're already 3 thoughts ahead. Here's what they won't tell you, but I will. They're absolutely freaking out in their little observation rooms and debriefing sessions and case file updates. They're sitting there with their degrees and their training manuals and their behavioral analysis frameworks. And you just walk through all of it like it's made of smoke. Like their entire professional identity is a child's coloring book, and you're a storm system that doesn't fit on the page. They watch you not react to things that should make you react. Watch you react to things they didn't even notice were happening. Watch you exist in this strange space between hyper-aware and completely detached. Like you're simultaneously in the room and orbiting it from somewhere else entirely. And the question that keeps them up at night, the one they won't say out loud but types into encrypted databases at 3 a.m, is this. How does someone learn to move like that without formal training? How does someone develop that level of control without institutional conditioning? And what the actual living hell happened to them that made this necessary for survival? Because here's the truth they're dancing around. Your body language isn't just unusual, it's adaptive, it's evolved. It's the physical manifestation of someone who's been through something the textbooks don't cover. Someone who survived by becoming something the predators don't recognize as prey anymore. Let me paint you a picture of what happens when you enter a space. And I want you to really feel this, because it's happening whether you notice it or not. The trained observers in the room, and there are always trained observers, whether they're obvious or not, they do this thing where their focus sharpens involuntarily because their subconscious is screaming that something's off, something's different, something doesn't compute with the pattern recognition software running in the background of their trained minds. You're not moving wrong exactly. You're just moving outside the probability zone, standing in ways that shouldn't be comfortable but somehow are for you, gesturing in patterns that don't match your stated emotional content, expressing yourself through this bizarre mix of stillness and precision that makes you look like you're conserving energy for something they can't see coming. They start analyzing, right? Because that's what they do. That's what they're trained for. Break down the components and figure out the puzzle. They drive around for 6 hours and without stopping. But with you, there's no puzzle to solve, because you're not hiding anything, and you're not performing anything. You're just existing in your actual frequency. And that frequency happens to be tuned to a station they don't have access to, running on a wavelength their equipment wasn't built to measure. I'm going to tell you something that's going to click a lot of pieces into place for you right now. Every awkward moment you've had where someone said you were intense, every social interaction where people seemed uncomfortable for reasons they couldn't articulate, every job interview or first date or family gathering where you felt like you were somehow failing at being human, even though you were just being yourself, that wasn't you being broken or weird or wrong. That was you being unreadable to people whose entire sense of safety depends on being able to read others. That was you triggering the uncanny valley response in people who need predictability to feel secure. That was you accidentally revealing that you're operating from a completely different instruction manual than the one everyone else got issued at birth and never questioned. They called it social anxiety when you were younger, maybe, or introversion, or weirdness, or being too quiet, or too intense, or too something. But what they were really responding to was the fact that your nervous system had already upgraded to a version of human interaction they're still trying to unlock. That your body had already learned to speak a language they don't teach in any school, because you had to invent it to survive circumstances that would have shattered anyone else into a million predictable pieces. Let's talk about what they're actually seeing when they watch you. And I mean really watch you. With their trained eyes and their threat assessment protocols and their behavioral analysis checklists. They're seeing someone who doesn't lean in during conversation when they should, doesn't lean back when confronted, doesn't display the standard micro-expressions that usually flash across human faces 43 times per minute like a biological telegraph system. They're watching you stand in a room full of tension, and your shoulders stay level, your breathing stays even, your hands stay loose and empty and ready, but not aggressive, just ready, in a way that makes them wonder what the hell you're ready for, and why you learned to be ready without telegraphing it to potential threats. You move through space like someone who's mapped every exit, not out of paranoia, but out of habit. Like someone who's calculated sight lines and positioned themselves with clear views while appearing casual. Like someone who's running tactical awareness software in the background of every interaction, while still managing to seem present and engaged in the conversation happening in the foreground. They notice you don't fill silence the way most people do. Don't rush to explain yourself or justify your presence or smooth over uncomfortable moments with nervous laughter or qualifying statements. You just let the silence exist, like it's a room you're comfortable sitting in, like you've made peace with the absence of noise and the presence of space and the weight of nothing being said while everything is being communicated. The interrogators and profilers, they've got this thing they do where they try to create cognitive load to overwhelm your processing and make you slip up, make you reveal the truth through body language when your words are still holding the line. They ask multiple questions in rapid succession. They introduce contradictions. They shift topics without warning. They invade your personal space or suddenly withdraw attention. And they watch for the tells, the biological responses you can't fully control, no matter how good you are at lying. But with you, something breaks in their system because you don't process cognitive load the way you're supposed to. You don't get overwhelmed or flustered or defensive. You just pause. You take that breath. You let their chaos wash over you like you're a rock in a stream, and then you respond from that center point they can't shake you out of, from that calm place they can't find in themselves when they're under the same pressure. And it disturbs them on a level they don't want to examine too closely. Because if someone can maintain that level of control without formal training, then what does that say about the necessity of all their training? What does that imply about human potential? They've been told doesn't exist outside institutional conditioning. What does that reveal about the possibility that some people are just born different, or forged different, or broken different, into something the system wasn't designed to handle? Here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part that makes them write those reports in language so clinical, it's almost scared. You don't perform the social lubrication rituals that keep human interactions smooth and predictable. You don't do the automatic smile when you make eye contact with strangers. Don't do the head nod acknowledgement when you pass someone in a hallway. Don't do the verbal filler sounds that signal you're still listening while someone talks. Don't mirror people's energy the way most humans do unconsciously to build rapport and establish connection. You're not rude about it. You're not hostile. You're just absent from the dance everyone else is doing without music. And that absence creates this void in the interaction where they expect something and nothing arrives, and their brain has to work harder to fill the gap, and eventually they just feel uncomfortable in your presence without being able to explain why. Some of them think you're judging them, even when you're not. Some think you're angry, even when you're neutral. Some think you're scared, even when you're just observing. Because they're projecting meaning onto your blank canvas and revealing more about themselves in their interpretation than you ever revealed through your actual expression. The body language experts, they've got names for what you do, but they don't have explanations. They call it flat affect or incongruent response or dissociative presentation. But those are just labels they slap on things that make them uncomfortable. Ways to pathologize what they can't understand, instead of considering that maybe you're not broken, maybe you're just operating from different survival programming than they've cataloged. They notice you don't startle at sudden noises the way you should. Your heart rate doesn't spike in situations that should trigger fight or flight. Your pupils don't dilate when you're lying because you've learned to believe your own constructed truths in real time. You've mastered the art of emotional regulation to such a degree that you can feel everything and show nothing, or show something completely different from what you're feeling depending on what serves you in the moment. You're not a psychopath. You're not a sociopath. You're not any of the scary labels they want to use to make sense of you. You're just someone who learned that showing your real face to the wrong people is how you get destroyed. Someone who figured out that vulnerability is a luxury you can't afford, so you built armor out of stillness and silence and strategic revelation. Let me tell you what they whisper about in those closed-door meetings after they've spent time observing you, after they've tried to crack your code and failed repeatedly and had to admit defeat without admitting defeat. They say things like, subject maintains unusual self-possession under stress, which is code for we tried to rattle them and nothing worked. They say emotional responses appear calculated rather than spontaneous, which means they're controlling something we can't control in ourselves, and that terrifies us. They write, body language suggests prior exposure to extreme circumstances, which translates to something happened to them that we can't identify, but it changed them fundamentally, and we're scared of what they learned from it. They note, subject demonstrates hypervigilance without paranoia, meaning they're watching everything, but they're not afraid. They're just aware in a way that makes us feel exposed. And the most damning observation, the one that gets highlighted and underlined and flagged for review, standard rapport-building techniques ineffective. Subject appears immune to social engineering. Recommend alternative approach. Which really means we can't manipulate them, we can't read them, we can't predict them, and we don't know what to do with someone we can't control through normal channels. You want to know the exact moment they realize they're out of their depth with you? The precise instant when their confidence cracks and they understand they're not dealing with a standard human behavioral pattern? It's when they try to use silence against you as a weapon, when they let the conversation die, expecting you to rush in and fill the void with nervous chatter and self-incrimination and desperate attempts to regain approval. But instead, you just sit there, comfortable in the quiet, waiting them out with more patience than they've got, because you've sat in worse silences. You've endured longer voids. You've made friends with the absence of sound and learned to hear what's really being said in the space between words. They shift in their seats first. They break eye contact first. They speak first, because they can't handle what you're showing them through your refusal to perform. Anxiety, your unwillingness to play the game they've already mapped out in their minds, where they're the intimidating authority and you're the nervous subject who needs to earn their way back into social acceptance. But you're not playing. You're just existing, and your existence without performance is more threatening to their worldview than any aggressive posturing could ever be. The really wild part is that you're not doing this consciously most of the time, right? You're not sitting there thinking, I'm going to maintain neutral facial expression and measured breathing and controlled gestures to unsettle the observers. You're just being yourself, after years of learning that yourself is something most people can't handle without processing it through layers of projection and judgment. You learn to exist outside their frequency, not because you studied their frequency and deliberately moved away from it, but because their frequency never made sense to you in the first place, never felt natural, never fit the shape of what you actually experience versus what you were told you should experience. While they were learning to read body language from books and courses and training programs, you were learning to survive by becoming unreadable, by developing this sixth sense about people's intentions that doesn't come from analyzing their gestures, but from feeling the energy they're broadcasting, from reading the truth underneath the performance they're giving and responding to what's real rather than what's presented. Here's what they're missing in all their analysis and assessment and professional head-scratching. They're trying to understand you through the lens of deception and pathology, when what they're actually encountering is authenticity so pure it doesn't need to perform itself. You're not hiding your emotions. You're not suppressing your reactions. You're not calculating your responses to manipulate their perception. You've just disconnected the automatic response system that most people run on, the one that makes them smile when someone smiles at them, mirror energy when someone projects energy at them, perform interest when someone demands their attention. You broke that circuit somewhere along the way. Maybe when you realized that automatic responsiveness was getting you hurt. Maybe when you discovered that people use your natural empathy against you. Maybe when you understood that the world rewards performance over authenticity, and you decided you'd rather be authentic and unrewarded than performing and validated, and now you move through the world in this weird space where you're deeply feeling but not deeply showing. Where you're intensely present, but not intensely reactive. Where you're completely engaged, but totally detached. And it breaks their analysis tools because those tools were designed for people who still need external validation to know they exist. The surveillance experts, the ones who watch people professionally and build profiles from thousands of hours of observation. They've got a file on you somewhere, and it's full of contradictions they can't resolve. Subject displays leadership characteristics, but avoids leadership position, shows high intelligence, but doesn't seek recognition, which makes you wonder, what did they really do? So what the safest, the rightest, the safest thing? Demonstrates strong boundaries but isn't overtly aggressive in defending them, appears confident but doesn't engage in status-seeking behaviors, seems comfortable in their own skin but doesn't try to make others comfortable around them. They're looking at someone who's internally referenced in a world of externally validated people, someone who's built their entire sense of self from the inside out, instead of letting the outside world tell them who to be. And that's so rare, so statistically anomalous, that they don't have a category for it that isn't pathologized. They need you to be broken so they can fix you, need you to be damaged so they can heal you, need you to be wrong so they can correct you. But you're not broken or damaged or wrong, you're just different, in a way that threatens the fundamental assumptions they've built their entire professional identity on.